Hello, and welcome to the Pain and Bride Quarterly Slush Pile. We are so glad that you're tuning in to listen to us today. What we're about to do is take you on a journey as we discuss some wonderful, wonderful poems by Rei Alta, and have essentially an editorial board meeting on air. So welcome and to our editorial table and vote along with us. So I'm Kathleen Volk Miller, been with the magazine forever and ever and ever, and am currently sitting at my desk in Collingswood, New Jersey, and so excited to be recording an episode. And I'm going to bounce it to Marion and call her 6,000 miles away. Marion Wrenn. Hello, my friend.
Answering your call. Hello, PBQ people and the Slushy crew. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I can't wait to talk about these poems. I'm Marion Wrenn. I'm over here in Abu Dhabi, and I'm going to bounce it to Canada. Dagne, Forrest.
Well, thank you. I'll try and catch that one, Marion. I'm up here in Canada, just outside the capital, Ottawa, where November is thoroughly confused. We've cycled through what seemed like summer to deep winter, and now it's rainy and gray. So, yeah, anyway, delighted to be here. I'll bounce it over to Alex.
Hello, Alex J. Tunney. I'm over in Long Island. Yeah, some reason I have Dunkin' Donuts on the brain. They introduced this breakfast wrap, but it's instead of like the tortilla wrap, it's a pancake, which feels like a 5-year-old has created it like many years ago, and Dunkin' Donuts is just deciding to like sell it. I don't know why that's stuck in my brain. I'm like, I have to try it just once. It's not going to be good.
Now? Are you having it right now?
No, I want to. I passed by it this morning on my walk, and now it's stuck in my brain. Like
you're just distractedly thinking about it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, and so I'm going to hand it over to who is listed as teacher in the Zoom call. I'm just going to.
I do love that.
I'm going to hand it over to Sam.
It's because I've borrowed a laptop from the Philadelphia Board of Education from my mother. So that's why it says that.
Hi, Sam's mom.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I am here in Baltimore, which sounds very much like the environment Dagne described. It's very rainy and miserable here. And I love it. So, I'm going to shoot us over to our special effects sound genius, Talia.
Hi, I'm Talia Thomas. I'm here in Philadelphia, just making sure everything sounds all right, and I'm excited for all you're going to hear.
Thank you so much. It's interesting that you guys did mention the weather, because I was thinking about that, Dagne, when you described Canada. I was like, oh, this is an interesting episode. Nobody's in the same state today. Talia and I are geographically the closest, but we're all in different states, and yet I think we're all having the same weather.
That's weird.
Except for Marion, right? It's wet and rainy here as well, and I don't have to go anywhere today. So, like Sam, I love it. If I don't have to go anywhere, bring it on. Right? So, okay, well, without further ado, I think we should jump in. We've got some really interesting work today with some fresh formatting that we'll explain as we go along. But Slushies, if you'd like, I might suggest that you go to pbqmag.org and take a gander at how these look on the virtual page. Again, we will describe them after we read them, but you might want to take a look. So they will be attached to this episode on our show notes. Who would like to kick us off?
I'm going to volunteer myself. Is that how it works? Is it really volunteering when it's your own self?
I don't think so.
All right. So we're starting with inflection point 1b. Theorem 1.1. The pain, longing, and ambivalence I feel related to this particular past lover hereafter him, he, or you is not unhealthy. Proof. By definition, time heals all wounds. Suppose, for all purposes, 11 years is considered to be time. It is true that 11 years have passed. However, I am not healed. Thus, this thing I feel is not really a wound. Theorem 1.2. There exists a value in this lover that I use to cope with my deficiency in my current state of being. Proof. By theorem 1.1, this lover does not represent some larger unresolved issue. It is true, however, I still have been unable to let him go. Therefore, he must be notable for a different reason. By supposition, that different reason is that he and I had an unrivaled connection, i.e., where while there is no such thing as soulmates, our cognitive compatibility was substantially higher than that of my previously observed matches. Hence, I feel an intensity through recollecting him such that most other things pale in comparison. Therefore, I remember him in order to feel something when I don't. Theorem 2.1. There exists an absolute truth about why I loved him and why I haven't been able to let go. Proof. By definition, all things happen for a reason. Since it is true that loving him and being unable to let go has happened, there must be a reason that caused it. This reason must be the truth. Suppose not, i.e., suppose this reason was not the truth. Then it would have not possessed the power necessary to cause such a consequential thing to happen. Such a consequential thing did happen. Thus, there's an attributable reason that this is the truth. Theorem 2.2, I must understand why I have not been able to let go in order to let go. Proof, by my own definition, I am a finder of truth. By theorem 2.1, there is a truth to be found. If there is a truth I have not yet found, then I must find it in order to exist, since finding truth defines me. Thus, I have no path forward but to find the truth. Caveat. Due to the following factors, the validity of the proofs outlined above is questionable. 1, invalid underlying assumptions. 2, faulty reasoning. 3, insufficient information. As a result, extrapolation based on the conclusions laid out in the preceding section is not advised.
Great
Nice.
reading, Alex.
Yeah,
Great reading.
absolutely.
Wow.
I did add my own flavor to the reading. I was trying to make it as dry as possible to follow the mood of the writer.
The
Or
Alex
at least
J.
what I think the
Long Island
writer
flavor. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that already starts to hint at some things about the way this is formatted. So those theorems are in boxes. There's lots of space. A lot of these lines are, rather floating as single lines. Do take a look. But I think we might as well start there because it's so overtly part of the construction of this poem. And I would like to start by saying, I hate math and all things math. And run screaming when I see the word theorem.
Right.
But damn it, I really, really dug this poem.
I know.
So how did she work that magic, Rei Alta? How did that happen? Right?
I push back. I'm not sure I consider this poetry. I consider maybe this is maybe because I've been teaching these, but I consider these hermit crab essays.
Okay, what is a hermit crab essay, Alex?
Yeah.
So hermit crab essay is the hermit crab takes on shells of other creatures to provide a home. It can switch out. So hermit crab essay takes the form of other forms, like in this case, a theorem, like a logic theorem, which I haven't encountered since like math class in 7th grade, and I thought I was done with. But or like rejection letters is the one I remember because or like a packing slip, but it's describing the person themselves, or it just using the form both as like a guide, as a form to like both use and also like maybe sometimes like use as a like to provide some tension when it doesn't fully like fill the form. Like in this case, like it's applying logic to a very emotional issue, and that's kind of where the sparks and the energy kind of come from.
So I've never heard of hermit crab essays, so I love it. Right. And what I also want to point to two things that you've named that really resonate, and that's that moment of feeling like the familiarity of seventh grade geometry, right? Or algebra or whatever this is.
Yeah.
Which,
Seventh grade? Where'd you go to school?
I don't know, ninth grade, high school. Well, as you can see, right, that sort of panicked feeling of like, shit, I don't know how this works, right? But when I'm in the space of these poems, I get that sort of weird nostalgia feeling of like, oh, it's familiar enough, right? Like I kind of recall this. And then it becomes like a syllogism. Like I can see the sort of the thinking steps, right?
Mhm.
So it's like I'm weirdly persuaded, which is a weird thing to say about a poem. So Alex, I think I like both the hermit crab and then that reference to, you know, being in high school. And it's making me think your description of hermit crab essays. Remember Joe Wenderoth's book, Letters to Wendy's?
Yeah.
Back like, you know, when a million years ago, like at the
Sure.
end of the 90s, right? Which was a sort of similar principle to what Alex described. It was like, you know, feedback letters to Wendy's, you know, the burger joint. And it was a series of poems that a book length series that he put together. And I all that to say, I'm really taken by the formality and rigor and the seeming like objectivity of science combined with heartbreak. And it just like, it pulls me through instead of repulsing me, you know?
I love that you use the word that you're convinced, you know, because this is in its very essence an argument, right? And she has to take you through the thought process, like you described, of how these conclusions are being met or come to, right? Yeah, I think that's the real fun of this. I mean, Slushies, I'll say it again, hearing it had to be a different experience. I can't imagine not seeing this on the page. You've got to take a look at this. Yeah.
It's
and have that same experience that we did, like where you're reading and nodding your head as you go along.
I also think it's interesting to think of it as a hermit crab essay, because I remember in Maggie Nelson's Bluets, she talks about the end of a strong love affair, and she describes that feeling as being like a hermit crab, like you're moving kind of houses, but you still kind of see that old shell. So I love reading it like this, because I was also not sure if I was thinking about it as poetry or flash fiction. And this feels, you know, a much better designation.
Yeah, you know, once Alex said it, that I think people use that for both things. I think people say hermit crab poetry too. It doesn't have to be an essay, right? So, you know, we're the genre blending, you know, it's funny. We're all so familiar with it, just didn't know the term. But you know, there are hermit crab poems as well. What do we want to call this? I think it doesn't even really matter, right?
Yeah, I think what I like about this is those whatever we call those kind of essays poetry. Like sometimes they can go just like south or get real corny. Like, and I feel like you had to have a certain understanding of language to like pull it off, like yeah, like I don't want to say it's obvious, but like the tension between like I am using logic to understand why I'm still hung up on this person, and like that could be written any number of ways, but like it is kind of winking at us, but it's also like still like hewing to the fore. I'm circling the idea, but like just the perfect word choice can make or break a thing like this. And I think this is why this works, where it's like just enough like, hey, I know like why this is not applicable to an actual like theorem, but like I'm just hewing as close to the sun as possible.
Yeah. And I think that the first section, stanza, whatever we want to call it, I think I'd call it the first section, it really does set the tone, and it gets it right with that upfront proof by definition time heals all wounds, and it ends it, and you know, you have time's passage, and we land on thus the thing I feel is not really a wound because time has done nothing for it. And I was all in at that point. And so I think getting the start right on this one was critical because it's quite a commitment to read this piece.
Yeah.
Were you the or yes? I heard somebody as I was reading go, okay.
I didn't, you know what, Slushies, usually I put myself on mute while people are reading and I forgot to. And that's me listening to poems. I'm like slapping the table and moaning. One of the things I wanted to say too, listening to you talk about this too, it's the progression of the theorems as they go, right? So they're numbered like 2.1 or 2.2, but you can actually hear a shift in the voice. So if you look at theorem 2.1, Slushies, right, there exists an absolute truth about why I loved him and why I haven't been able to let go. Proof, by definition, all things happen for a reason. Since it is true that loving him and being able to let go has happened, there must be a reason that caused it. This reason must be truth. Suppose not, i.e., suppose the reason was not the truth. And like what I was so charmed by that, Alex, when you read it, because it's like backflipping in the line, you know, like as it's going forward, like logic, it's also like accommodating like other possible arguments, and it feels frenzied, like inside this tight form. And I dig it.
Yeah, the devil's advocate shows up all of a sudden. Yeah. Within the speaker's voice. And it comes back with a vengeance in the caveats at the end of the whole piece, which I love because it kind of recommitted me to exploring these theorems. I wanted to go back and read them again.
Yeah, I think it teaches you how to read it. I will say that I only have one real qualm with theorem 1.2, and that is that I feel like there's an assumption in there that maybe should have been its own theorem, which is, while there is no such thing as soulmates. That is the only thing that pushed me out, honestly. I was like, whoa, okay. Like, so this is something this person believes. And so I'm surprised at that line. That's one point.
I'm sorry, Sim, where is that?
It's in theorem 1.2, line 4.
In the longer paragraphs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By supposition, that different reason is that he and I had an unrivaled. Right. So there's an assumption. That's why I want to see what was around it. If she unpacks it a little or acknowledges that it could be true.
I think that's a good catch, Sam, because throughout she's caught her own assumptions and is examining them in these theorems. And you're right. That one feels like we needed a fifth one.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to go back. Where is that one?
It's in the next edition of the textbook, you know?
Yeah.
It delivers on the caveats. Her caveats are invalid underlying assumptions, faulty reasoning, insufficient information, right? So she's built this beautiful container for that kind of fuckery. You know what I mean?
Underlying assumptions. There is no such thing as soulmate.
So good.
Yeah.
The sound of rereading, Slushies. The sound of rereading.
Yeah. Well, I think she kind of covers it too in what she says leading up to it. The different reason is that he and I had an unrivaled connection. Like she's saying, okay, even if there are no such thing as soulmates, our cognitive compatibility was substantially higher than that of previously observed matches. I remember him in order to feel something when I don't.
That's when I slapped the table.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. And I love that she uses cliches as proofs. You know, time heals all wounds, and all things happen for a reason.
Yeah. Well, the taking them seriously in this way, putting them under this lens, it recasts them. You experience them differently. Yeah.
There's such a great tone there. I feel like exactly what you said, Dagne. She's taking them seriously and mocking them at the same time.
At the same time.
Like, yeah, because how can we deconstruct these emotions and apply logic and rationale to them, right?
Yeah. And ultimately for me, it is her seriousness that wins me over. Like, I love that there's the kick in the teeth, but it's the commitment to the seriousness.
Sure.
That
11 years is considered to be time.
Yeah. This is
it is true that 11 years have passed. However, I am not healed. Argue with that. Yeah, it's really great.
Do we want to vote?
I want to vote.
I want to vote.
Do.
All right, let's vote.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, vote. And it's unanimous. Woo!
I think our listeners might have seen that one coming.
I'll bet.
Yeah, apologize for the lack of dramatic tension there, but you got to go read it. Read it, Slushy.
Yeah.
Look at it on the page.
Whenever you guys say the sound of thinking or rereading, I'm showing my specific age group, but I always like go ba the sound of sailing from Death Cab. What's the band? Death Cab for Cutie or whatever.
Death Cab for Cutie? I don't know it.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Oh, it's
you're gonna have to
in
find
one
it.
indie movie or another. I don't know which one, but it was there in the early 2000s somewhere.
You kind of laughed so hard I didn't get it. I didn't hear you.
There's a certain song called "The Sound of Settling" by Death Cab for Cutie.
Okay. Okay.
It has a certain hook that you'll know that if you've heard it or not.
Okay.
I don't know if Sam was agreeing with me or not. I can't.
I am agreeing with you. I don't remember the specific song, but I've just written it down to listen to later.
The ba part, you'll know it.
I thought you were singing the McDonald's song, Alex.
Like this poem, we're loving it. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. All right,
I was just listening to Death Cab for Cutie the other day, but I didn't hear that one. No.
No.
I think I might have seen Death Cab for Cutie in Philly once.
You don't remember?
But you're not sure.
Isn't that terrible? My niece Jessica was like 13, 14 years old and was in love with Death Cab for Cutie. And then this other one, something about a dashboard. Is there something like a
Dashboard Confessional? I've seen it in Philadelphia too. So
you were probably at the same show.
I love that. Something about a dashboard. That's great, Marion.
She should know. Marion does not do drugs. Her lack of not being able to remember is not about drug use at the concert, and certainly not with her 13-year-old.
Seriously, but it's funny that I have no recollection of it. It was just a giant wall of sound. All right, can I read the next poem? I want to read Rei Alta's Wave Height and Slushies. This is another one. So that really kind of illustrates Rei's mind on the page, like the way the poem is laid out. And then get this, Slushies, there's a footnote that's its own poem. Right. So you really have to take a look at this. And I'm going to do my best to try to capture all of that. Here I go. Wait. Oh, and it's also like the stanzas are laid out like left justified, right justified. So bear with me, right? Wave height, crest. You approached after cycle of fire. There was a tectonic shift fueled by molten rock and dressed up decay. I believed your promise this time around. I felt it lift my feet. Trough. Footnote 1. I wish my love became a two-toed sloth like the algae on its fur. It ignores his simple existence. I wish my love became a deep sea vent, spewing sulfur to fill his nostrils and make him gag. I wish my love strutted down the cobblestones in heels with a long, deliberate stride and a toss of its hair. That's the footnote. Trough. You receded, redefining forever as only 13 days, a real trailblazer. And like eddies forming behind Pinnacle Rock, the reverse current dragged me in asymmetric swirls.
Wow. Thank you. So, you know what was funny, Marion? When you jumped down to the footnote, I thought I got lost, and I don't think I would have done that. I think I would have stayed in the trough stanza and then went and read the footnote. So like you always do, maybe we should read it again.
Yep.
That second way. I really did think, what? Where'd she go? What happened?
I know. I thought about doing that, and I was like, okay, but that's how footnotes work. Like if it is like the sort of graphic representation, like if you're focused on that, she wants you to stop and then read the footnote. But honest to goodness, whoever does that, like I never read footnotes anyway, ever. Full confession.
Really?
And then look what this footnote does.
David Foster Wallace?
Even, maybe only David Foster. I will read. Who won't, right? But generally, when I'm reading academic essays, I'm like, with the footnotes, even though that's where some of the most interesting stuff happens. But who's got the fucking time? Okay, I'm f-bombing. That's twice
You
in
really are.
Sorry.
I think your internet connection caught that and kind of warped you a bit, or maybe it's mine. I don't know.
All right.
No censor
All right.
from the UAE.
Do you want me to read it now, or maybe we'll do it at the end that other way?
I think now you got to read it now because now we chatted.
Okay.
You have to read it now.
Ready? Okay. So now, Slushies, I'm reading it straight down the page and I'm not pausing, even though I'll tell you. No, I won't even tell you where the footnote is. Ready? Okay. Wave height. Crest. You approached after cycles of fire. There was a tectonic shift fueled by molten rock and dressed up decay. I believed your promise this time around. I felt it lift my feet. Trough. You receded, redefining forever as only 13 days, a real trailblazer. And like eddies forming behind pinnacle rock, the reverse current dragged me in asymmetric swirls. Footnote. I wish my love became a two-toed sloth like the algae on its fur. It ignores his simple existence. I wish my love became a deep-sea vent spewing sulfur to fill his nostrils and make him gag. I wish my love strutted down the cobblestones in heels with a long, deliberate stride and a toss of its hair.
Thank you, Marion. Now, the first time you read, I heard a bit of delight in your voice over dressed up decay, or what? Or am I wrong?
There's so much delight in my voice.
I know. It's kind of a cool.
I don't know.
I like dressed up decay.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone looks like they're thinking.
I love this. And I actually love the footnote because it reminds me of one of my favorite contemporary books, Samantha Hunts the Seas, where in kind of the penultimate scene, you have the protagonist and her mother in the water, and the water starts to speak to them. And she shows that through, it will say like, my mother received giving, and then giving is bolded from the wave. And for me, I just feel like on one hand, like what the trowel is saying is the footnote is how I'm interpreting it. And in some ways it's more beautiful. It's the footnote. And I just kind of love that. It's almost like two poems in one, or like an envelope with another poem.
Yeah. And Sam, like it took me a minute, like wave height, right? And then like, how is this all working? And the way the poem is sort of spread out on the page is like the crest and the trough of a wave, right? So it's like the crest and the, you know what I mean? So it's just, I don't know, it's fascinating to see that the play, the layout too, right?
Absolutely.
So I'd say that again, Samantha. It's Samantha Hunt's book, The Seas.
Absolutely.
I'm jealous of this poem because it's like so simple, but it like works on multiple levels. And it's so good. I'm annoyed that kind of like it's like not fairly though some for the rest of us kind of a thing where it's like I love the undertow of the relationship, just like the bitterness of redefining forever as only 13 days. It's like like you. And then, and then the parentheses, the real, just like stab is like a real trailblazer exclamation point. Right. Like, I love when exclamation points are essentially like sharp knives.
It's a shiv. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a shiv.
Totally. It's actually a very plain spoken poem in many ways. The language being used here is very accessible, very straight up. Not, well, to use Marion's favorite phrase today, I'm not fucking around here, but it's moving.
Yeah.
If there's anything that I find a little off-putting, it's the underlining of crest and trowel, because I feel it's a bit reminiscent of the last poem, which I liked a lot. I actually like this poem more, and it feels like a technical kind of glitch that like doesn't need to be in this poem. It feels like a holdover in some ways.
Like
I didn't even notice that. I noticed the capitalization, but not the underlining. So those I don't know what we would call them, stanza titles, right? Almost. It's so unusual. But they're both capped and underlined.
Yeah. I also realize I need to ask. So my American pals, do you say trowel? Because I would say trough.
I think Marion said trough. I would say trough.
Okay.
I just say everything wrong. So
well, listen, there are words that I still can't get right that I've been looking at for years. So like, I get it.
Early readers, right?
I absolutely. I know.
Tell me about the word kernel and which kind I'm talking about.
Anyway, sometimes we have real differences, even though we're cheek by jowl, right? As countries go. But
no, I just jumped into a Google search to see if there's a reason why that's capitalized, right? And I know I don't know enough about the protocol of science to know,
Yeah, what would you Google? What in the world did you Google?
I googled crest and trough. Crest and trough.
Wave calculations are a whole subset of mathematics, right? There are people who just specialize in this. So you're not wrong, Marion. My feeling is that this is Rei's choice.
Yeah, probably.
Rather than we're going to come to a later poem with hypotheses where Rei's using established, formats. But here my feeling is maybe it was just Rei's choice.
Yeah.
I just interpret it as like a visual thing, just to so it's easier to like read as quickly, just the
Yeah.
I like very much the idea of additional titles, like that it's wave height, but then each stanza, those words, crest and trough, work very well as stanza titles.
Yeah. They're great signals.
Dagne, that signals is right. And I was just thinking about what Sam said earlier too, about like the poem inside the poem, like the envelope, right? How that footnote poem is like an envelope. And it's like the titles within this title, right? Okay. Now here, Rei, I like your brain, because the asymmetric swirls that like behind the pinnacle rock, like the poem is spiraling. It really is spiraling.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And we're caught in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Slushies, yet again, you got to look. Those two stanzas we keep talking about, crest and trough, as Marion said, they're right and left justified, but they look like waves. They're waves going in opposing directions. So this is just all kinds of fun and fabulous. You can spend so much time here, right, guys?
Absolutely.
On the footnotes too, can I just say aloud that I love that those lines are so, almost Elizabethan or something. I'm expecting a sonnet. I wish my love became a two-toed sloth. Right? I wish my love became a deep sea vent spewing sulfur.
That it would gag on.
It's awesome. I love that juxtaposition. Love it. And
It's
you can
pretty
see,
great.
like, how could that even? I wish my love strutted down the cobblestones in heels with a long, deliberate stride and a toss of its hair.
Such confidence. Love it.
Yeah, I'm getting that tattooed. The whole stanza.
The whole thing.
I'll get one on my forehead and then the whole footnote on my back.
Well,
Find
sounds like it's time to vote. We've got 2 more.
Oh my goodness, 2 more. Okay, let's do it. Are you ready? 1,
Sorry,
2,
I'm laughing at Kathy's tattoos. Okay, good. Right, go
1,
ahead.
2, 3, vote. And it's unanimous yet again.
All right.
You know what Alex did there, Slushies? He very slowly unfurled his thumb so that at least we would have just a nanosecond of
Drama,
kinetic tension.
a little.
But Alex, I didn't believe you for a second. I knew which way that thumb was going. Oh boy, this is going to be another great one to read. Who's doing it, Sam or Dagne?
I can read it.
All right.
So I'm assuming we're bouncing across the page, right? Left to right, left to right.
Yes, that's what I would do.
Yeah. So we've got a poem that's effectively got 2 titles: Non-Exhaustive List of Difficult Things, and I'm Not Just Some Bitch. I'm already loving that. And then the poem is laid out. Left justified, right justified, and it kind of ping pongs. I think it's a braided poem. It's really, it looks like it's 2 poems, but let's dive in.
Yeah. I was just going to say the left side is a bulleted list.
Yes, good point.
And the right side is a more traditional poem form.
Yes.
And again, folks, we cannot describe it. Go look.
Yeah, you got to go and look at it.
You know what? I think maybe it gets read twice. I may, Dag, if you feel like reading it across a page and then reading it as 2 separate, just to see if it. Yeah?
Just to see. Okay. All right. Non-exhaustive list of difficult things. I'm not just some bitch. Discovering calculus. De-escalating global conflict. You tell me you're challenged. To have a conversation is simply too tough, though we've held each other's brains in our palms. Running a political campaign, solving a Millennium Prize problem. The very first night we met, you described feeling stereotype threat, telling your parents that they would have a grandson living far from him and far from home. Building the first computer, combating climate change. To share stories about substance abuse and coming out was dehydrating. It was like spitting out rock salt. You sucked it up, and I watched it dissolve on your lips. Convincing the government to support crypto, managing race relations in the US. Some nights we'd talk until the morning forced us from bed. When we'd speak, we exhaled a cloud that strangled sleepiness. Creating the Turing machine, ensuring worldwide food security. Today, you'll only lecture compassion and honesty are zero sum. You will get none of mine. So you think we should read it vertically? I don't know. Now that people have heard it, what do you think?
You know, that's so funny because it worked so well. I don't know, like that experience of like your brain takes it in as 2 columns, but then that second experience simultaneously is taking it in as 1. Oh, I don't know.
No, I like it the way that we just read it. Yeah. Some of the phrasing in this piece I don't like as much as the earlier poems. But you know, again, it's just personal taste, right? For me, holding each other's brains in our palms, I don't know. For me, it didn't really resonate. Exhaled a cloud that strangled sleepiness. I don't know. For me, again, just kind of felt awkward. So I paid more attention to it rather than kind of being in the flow.
And there's something else like, okay, so the bulleted list on the left-hand side, right? It really feels like a sort of like a series of fragments, right?
Yes.
And then the I'm not some bitch column, right? The stanzas are more a sort of lyrical, right?
Organic.
Yeah. You know? And it wants to have like I don't know, it feels like like my brain wants a narrative emerging out of the juxtaposition rather than the
rather than just sort of ping-ponging. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I want the register to be a bit different
Mm-hmm.
in the two,
Mm-hmm.
more than it is, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the I'm not just some bitch side is kind of carrying a lot of the weight of the poem, where I wanted a tighter relation between the list and, like, I guess the more raw poem, half of the poem, whereas like I wanted it to link up a bit more.
They're pretty disconnected. Yeah.
Like I kind of wanted to move like calculus and the crypto as the last two lines, because then it ties into like the zero sum, like tying that math, like, so I just wanted a bit like just move some of them around at least, or maybe slide in some new ones.
You know what? I'm glad you pointed to that last line, right? If that's when you're looking at, I'm sorry, Alex, the very last stanza, right? Today you'll only lecture compassion and honesty are zero sum. You will get none of mine. There's no end quotation mark there, right? And sometimes I really like when poets do that, like they don't put a terminal mark of punctuation, or they sort of, it's a bold move. And weirdly, I can't see how it's a choice. I mean, or an accident. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that sounds harsh, right? For Rei Alta, who's so careful with the layout of these poems, but I don't get it. Why, like, not that she has to flatter me. I just don't understand why there's no end quotation mark there, right? Like, how does that link back to either the voice of that speaker or the idea of the column, So I don't know, Alex, I think it kind of aligns with what you're saying about like questioning the placement of the lines, right? And the momentum of the poem.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to give like some credit, like that Ray's like trying different directions throughout like the poems kind of that we're discussing today, that like it's like not all experiments sometimes work. I hope that's not too, I mean, aren't all poems and writing experiments? That's what I kind of mean. Like when I say experiments.
Yeah, I love that she's approached so many different forms throughout these pieces, and they're very brave, even though they're kind of buttoned down with their logic and so on. They also bear their soul. The speaker bears their soul in these pieces, but I tend to agree. I'm intrigued by this piece, but for me it just doesn't work ultimately in the way that the other two just bowled me over.
I do want to point out, though, smack in the middle of the poem, right? Even though it's on the left side, right? Or the right side, or I don't know. It's under the I'm not just some bitch sequence, right? To share stories about substance abuse and coming out was dehydrating. It was like spitting out rock salt. You sucked it up and I watched it dissolve on your lips. If that's not like a punch in the heart, like, wow, like, but when I looked away from the poem and I came back and my eye landed on that, I had almost missed it on the first read, like, or the second read, like I didn't hear it, until I saw it again. But wow.
Yeah, it's feeling like it's getting a little lost in here because it is pretty amazing.
I think that this would really work in her collection.
Yes. For sure.
I mean, the right side is also a non-exhaustive list of difficult things.
Right?
Yeah, in its own way.
And that's what charms me. I love the stanza that Marion pointed out, and we've held each other's brains in our palms. I think she's still got a lot of magic going on, but I appreciate what your guys are saying as well. Well, we do have one more.
We do.
Shall we?
So let's.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, vote. And this one's not coming with us, but it was so much fun. Thank you so much, Rei. We've got one last one. I outline the hypothesis. It's me and you, Sam. Should we arm wrestle?
I can do it.
Great.
Okay. I outline the hypotheses. I got this. This is 101. I simply need to determine what a human woman should feel in this situation based on whether or not I can reject the null. H0, null. He's a small person on a power trip who never cared. He wasn't actually sick from bad Indian food. Each time I felt we needed to talk. H1. He's not small but broken. It was shame that caused him to disappear without warning. I memorialized every scene of his trauma while he forgot my middle name, H2. He's an emotionless sociopath in a decade-long grift, laughing about me with his friends. Each month he adds some new mark to his collection. One day he'll be caught and I'll guest star in a true crime documentary. Yes, all very plausible. Now all that's left to detect and affect is to dampen the noise.
Aha. Thank you, Sam. Nice read.
Tour de force, Sam. Tour de force. Nice
Yeah,
read.
absolutely. This is such, I love the voice in this piece. I love the I got this.
Yep.
I simply need to determine what a human woman should feel. And, so the setup then moving into what is effectively a null hypothesis set against an alternative hypothesis. And then, not so traditionally, we got a secondary alternative hypothesis, which in my reading is basically saying the null hypothesis is true, just in different words, which is he's a dirtbag.
Yeah, I love this.
Well, how extreme it gets, he's a small person on a power trip he's an emotionalist sociopath. Right? I love the build up is great.
It actually feels like sitting with a group of my girlfriends and comforting someone, and like,
absolutely,
if the comforting doesn't work, you keep escalating like the guy's flaws.
Yeah, and then
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love the plainness of the language, the conversationalness, as Sam just said, juxtaposed against the premise of this, the hypotheses and the hermit shell crab that we're using this time, the hermit shell we're using this time.
Yeah.
And to have that language, and especially to end with, now all that's left to detect and affect is to dampen the noise. Mic drop.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It is such a mic drop. It is such a mic drop.
That's a toss of the hair, right?
In those high heels.
In those heels.
Yeah, I just love how she doubles down in her H2 stanza. I mean, the null hypothesis was already so damning, but then when she arrives there, it's just like, oh, wow, okay.
And there's humor in this and also such heartbreak, like the Indian food and stuff that's kind of funny and very specific. But then that line laughing about me with his friends just is piercing. Absolutely.
Yeah. I memorialized every scene of his trauma.
Yeah.
While he forgot my middle name.
Yep. Again with these lines right in the belly of the song.
So good.
Like, what are you doing?
So few words, omit needless words, right? Like Rei knows how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
She's internalized that, and there are no needless words here. Yeah.
I feel like the juxtaposition here works. I feel bad comparing it to like the last poem, but like I feel like the tension works better here, is like more considered, where like I just imagine the speaker kind of like hunched over trying to like write this out, like this trying to figure out the hypothesis and figure out the new formula or whatever, just like it especially I'm thinking it, but with the first poem, which is very structured and like there's a little hint, here's it's like You can hear the angry writing, I guess.
Yeah, there's
In it, and
fury
break-
in this piece, Alex. You're absolutely right. Like barely contained fury.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, earlier when we were thinking of the hermit crab essays, Alex, like this one feels essayistic to me too, in the sense that like the writer is thinking it through on the page, right? And the logic is propulsive. And then I love that move at the end that Dagne described, right? The second reading, which confirms the first reading. It's just brilliant. And that feeling I never got in high school, I could never quite follow proofs and theorems. Like I was, and mostly because maybe then I was, sort of half in the bag, as we all were in high school, and unable to like just follow things. But this, it's a delight to be reminded of these structures and then get them like both resurrected and new, like I'm digging it, really digging it.
It should be, you're saying it should be on high school math curriculum. And I agree.
Totally.
Because high school students would get this. They'd be like, oh, okay, I got it. Yeah. Here's my null hypothesis for you. Yeah.
I'm down. No, from the first time I read these, I thought I can't wait to teach these. Not in a math class, obviously, but yeah. Whoa. Oh, guess what? We didn't even vote.
We gotta vote. All right, let's do it. Surprise.
1, 2, 3, vote. It's in.
Wow.
That was my hypothesis.
It's right, you know it. Right, friends? When it's right, you know it.
You do.
Yeah, Rei Alta, all the gratitude in the world goes to you. And so happy to share your work with our slushies like this.
Yes.
And you keep writing and slushies keep listening and let us know how we're doing. And what do you guys have to say? Anything else?
I think trailblazer needs to go in the episode name because I think Rei is a poetry trailblazer.
Right.
Oh, that's
Let's
lovely.
do it. I'm gonna write Trailblazer as the title of the episode. I had caveats rock.
Ooh, yeah.
That was one of it. And then what was the other one? You gotta look. But I think we'll move that into the show notes. But this is great. What a great
And now they're listening to our thought process.
exactly.
I don't know what you think of this title. How do we come up with it?
We need to put footnotes in the show notes for this
You
one.
know what? I'm putting it in the show note. And you know what the footnote's going to say? Don't read the footnote. Footnote 1. Love it.
It's funny, Marion, about all that you said about footnotes. I love footnotes. I love footnotes. And I generally read them at the end of the page. I don't keep skipping down. But when I get to the bottom of the page, read those footnotes.
I think we need to know this about the team. I read footnotes too.
Yeah.
I feel like I always have like strong intentions, like going to the gym to like read footnotes, but I run out of time. But when I'm writing, I also realize that if I start a footnote and it's going 3-4 lines, I'm like, this is just something else. Like you have just become interested in something else.
I
Or
gotta go
you're
back to
David
the-
Foster Wallace. One of those two things.
Oh God.
That's exactly it. All right. Love
Oh,
it.
all right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Slushies. Thank you, everyone. And we'll talk soon. Woo!
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye
loves.
everyone.